Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that gender equity in media society operates on the ancestral, unceded, stolen, and occupied territories of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. On behalf of the GEM staff and the board, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to the Indigenous custodians of these lands and pay our respects to their ancestors. We are grateful for the teachings that they provide, the patience that they exercise, and for the opportunities that they provide us to share and engage with their art and culture. Hi, everyone. My name is Anna. You might have seen me around. I'm the programming coordinator at Gender Equity in Media Society Vancouver, which is a member-based organization committed to advancing gender equity in film and TV. You can support us by spreading the word about what we do, making a donation, attending our film festival, Gem Fest, and participating in our events like this and becoming a member. Fun fact, did you know GEMS has a sliding scale for our membership fees? Our fees range from $25 to $124, and GEMS members get 25% off of GEMS events, workshops, and 20% off of tickets and passes to our annual International Film Festival, GEMFest. Members also receive discounts from our community partners and vendors that are part of our Member Advantage program. Some discounts include 20% off of Playback, which is Canada's production, broadcasting, and interactive media destination, offering an intimate view of industry events, trends, and innovation. And then other vendors I'll put into the chat, and you can go to gemsvancouver.org to sign up today. There will be an opportunity at the end to ask questions, and you can type in the chat or raise your hand or just unmute yourself. We'll let you know when that portion starts. But without further ado, let's get to our wonderful chat. Today, we are honored to host producer Sara Wylie of Blue Heron. And today, we also have another Sara Blake, moderating this real talk. Please welcome our moderator, Sara. Please introduce yourself to the group.
Thank you, Anna. Hi, everyone. My name is Sara Blake. I'm a producer here in Vancouver, BC. I have a production company called Ceroma Films, and I mostly focus on director-driven feature films for the global audience. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and I'm very delighted to introduce Sara Wylie, an amazing producer, and someone I know quite well. So this will be a fun chat today. Sara, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. My name is Sarah also. I'm a producer and a filmmaker myself, based here in Vancouver. And yeah, just looking forward to our conversation today.
Sweet. Well, we might as well just jump right in.
Go for it.
Sweet. Well, first off, congratulations. I mean, all the success with Blue Heron. I've seen the film a couple times, and every time I watch it, I am always moved. And it was really nice to, rewatch it this week and just be reminded of, yeah, kind of the first couple times. And I've been lucky to kind of see this film over its trajectory, but I would love for you to kind of fill us in on the origin of Blue Heron, how you got involved, and maybe because you're also a filmmaker yourself, like I'd like to hear about your overall like journey, and maybe how you even got to this point.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's for me, it's been kind of like a long roundabout journey to filmmaking. I kind of came to it in my mid to late 20s. Like I started off as a political activist in the city. I did a lot of political organizing around elections. I worked with a group called Shit Harper Did, and we made funny videos about how Stephen Harper was, destroying the country, and did like all local comedians in Vancouver, which was very fun. And that was kind of my intro into video making. But it really had never occurred to me to be a filmmaker, until I kind of got into that. And then I started working with a local documentary company. And from there, kind of just got really interested in documentary film, specifically. And that was kind of tied back to my political roots. And so I ended up moving to Toronto in 2017, to do an MFA in documentary media. Um, and that was at Ryerson, which is now TMU. And when I was there, I ended up kind of meeting a lot of wonderful filmmakers who were in the York program at the time. York has an amazing film MFA as well. And so, I was connected with Jessica Johnson and Bita Judaki and Sophy Romvari. So that was kind of how I met Sophie. Even though we're both from here, we met in Toronto while we were doing our MFAs. And I had yeah, I think we just quickly like started a friendship pretty instantly, and became quite close. And then, I had a little bit of a background in producing, working with the documentary film company Salazar. And so I had that experience, but I was trying to like direct and work on my own, and that was what I was doing at my MFA was kind of yeah, figuring out my own voice as a director. But I still knew that I love like my favorite part about film is working with my friends. I love that's to me is the reason why I do this. Is I love the medium, but I really love the process of it as well, and just working with people who you love and trust and making things together. And then so Sophie, I can't remember how this came about through our friendship, but she was interested in working on making a short film. And then I came on and I was like, oh, I'd love to be the producer for that. So we were for a long time in the process of making a short film that was going to be an adaptation of a Joyce Carol Oates short story. It would have been good. Unfortunately, it never got made because we cast this amazing actor named Rene Auberjonois to play the main character. And he's like so famous for being in like he's like in Robert Altman movies, he's in Kelly Reichardt movies. He was also Odo on Star Trek, if you're a fan of Star Trek. Um, but unfortunately he passed away and while we were in the process of that. So that film never got made. But that was kind of the start of our relationship and we just worked really well together. And knew that we wanted to kind of continue to figure out that relationship. And then the pandemic started. And that kind of threw a bit of a wrench in our plans. But I think by the time I was back here in Vancouver, Sophie was like, I'm working, and I'm in the meantime, I'm still making my own films and working as a director too. Like, I think I'll always kind of be doing both of those things. Because I just love working with my friends. I love supporting them, but I also love working on my own films and making my own art as well. Um, and yeah, so somewhere in the mix there, Sophie was like, I'm developing my first feature. Would you at all be interested in producing that? And I was like, yes, absolutely. I think it was like a very instant, like, of course, absolutely. Like, I love Sophie, she's so talented. I think I'd seen probably a couple of her films, like Pumpkin Movie and Norman at that point, when we were just starting to work together on that short. And I just knew that this feature was going to be quite phenomenal. So before we even had a script, before we had anything, yeah, I was on board with her, and we brought on another producer named Ryan Bobkin as well, who was on the film together. And yeah, then things just kind of, it wasn't instantaneous. It took a few years of looking for funding and applying for Talent to Watch and getting rejected and applying again. And then, finding a myriad of other ways of financing the film, but it all kind of came together. So it's been a really lovely journey with Sophie and, just working with a very good friend of mine who is obviously an exceptional filmmaker.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I'm so curious, because, working with your friends, I would love to kind of hear, I guess, two things is like one, like what you feel is like a very like healthy relationship with a director, like producer director, especially when you're friends and knowing that you were on board so early, like kind of hearing how you managed like this the script writing process and all the iterations and of course all the ups and downs that come with the the highs and lows of rejection and getting stuff and each piece. I'd love to kind of hear that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know some folks don't like working with their friends and they're like, I like strict boundaries, I like professional boundaries. I want to hire people, come and do the job, and then that's it. and that clarity is helpful for them in their process. And I'm just like the opposite. I'm just like, if I'm going to be here, I want to be working with I want to be working with my friends, or just people that I can tell we kind of share the same values. We share the same reason for being here, for making art and making films. And um, yeah, I think I'll always want to work with people who I consider friends. And I think the kind of the core of that success of how to kind of balance that is really just, I think with Sophie, we just have like very good communication, like honest communication seems to be the real trick, as I learned in this process. There's always going to be bumps. There's always going to be things that come up. There's always going to be a little bit of conflict and confusion that you're always going to have to navigate in these high stress situations. But being able to speak openly and honestly, and I think we're very lucky too. We both just really trust each other. We're both, I think, very compassionate. You know, we care about each other, empathetic human beings, um, and trust that we can, if something arises, that we both can just be like, "Hey, so this thing happened," or like, "Can we talk about this?" And then we can just address it, figure it out together, and move through things pretty quickly. Like I think you really learn like good conflict resolution really well. And I think I definitely learned that skill in this process. So yeah, I just feel very lucky that we have that kind of open communication. That was like the foundation of our relationship. We have a lot of trust, and we were able to, yeah, navigate things, the professional and the friendship. There's always going to be stuff. I think it's always really tricky for me too, talking about money with friends and navigating those things. But yeah, I think Sophie and I are just really lucky. We both kind of see things in the same way and have the same perspective of how we want to be in the world and how we want to treat people and bring them on set, and make sure everyone's taken care of, and feels comfortable and safe. So yeah, I think that kind of shared foundation really carried us through in a big way.
Oh, yeah. No, it's so true. I mean, I also work with a lot of my friends or people who've become friends over time, and I totally understand that need for trust. I'm Obviously, the film is a very tight budget. It's a talent to watch. And I know, I mean, you mentioned money a little bit. I think this is a challenging part about being a producer, especially when you're creatively involved. Um, I would be curious to hear how you approach protecting like the film's, identity and voice, like as it's developing over time, and where you kind of step in to help, shape Sophie's vision without compromising, but also knowing that there's real hard facts.
Yeah. Yeah, we learned a lot about making small budget films. I mean, both Sophie and I come from that background. Like we were both kind of more documentary leaning folks who are used to making things on no budget, very scrappily putting together films, maybe with an arts council grant. We both kind of gotten by on those over the past few years, but yeah, we're both used to working with limited resources. So I think that really helped us, that kind of familiarity with working with limited resources, and being scrappy and really focusing on the things that felt very important to invest money in, and then the things that were not as crucial as, like, for example, investing time and money to find the perfect casting the perfect mother and father for the film and things like that. So I think our priorities were aligned in that respect. But yeah, learned a lot about making, a small budget film throughout the whole thing. So that was, we were we applied for Talent to Watch. We got rejected. We were like, we kind of had an interesting experience with them because I think we were like 17 out of 16 that like got 16 got approved, and we were number 17, and they were like, hold on, maybe we can fund you this year. And so we were kind of holding on, and unfortunately, they couldn't fund us. We applied again the following year, independently, and finally got it, but then ended up having to kind of piece things together. we were like also a Hungarian co-production, which was very lucky, thankfully. And we're able to kind of add that money in as well. And then private investment to kind of make it all happen and preserve the vision of the film. But the other thing I would say too is like and how we were able to preserve Sophie's vision as well is like she was a producer as well in this film. So she also understood, what was going on and what our budget was and like understood how the money was being spent and how things were going to be prioritized with the limited funds we did have. I think we made in my opinion, we made an incredible film for a small a small budget indie film.
Can't agree.
And and then I think the other, like to credit how that was possible, it was completely because of our collaborators. Like the people we brought on, our heads of department, a lot of people took pay cuts that, our cinematographer, Maya Bankovic, is an incredible cinematographer who works on, like Hollywood movies and she works on Star Trek and she's doing very high level Hollywood productions and she took a pay cut to come work on this film because she believed in the film. And we just got very lucky to have so many incredible collaborators. A lot of people too who were also working on their first feature. Like this was my first feature. Our production designer, Victoria Faruya, it was her first feature, who were just kind of learning their craft as they went. But I think we're just such we're all there. Our team was just such a crew of exceptionally talented people, and that is reflects in the film of like really the production value of it. I think we got so lucky with the people who we collaborated with.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I guess like when you have that kind of tight-knit team, you're able to all like play off of each other's strengths and share your experiences as you go. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Um, Curious about just the co-production, like how, I mean, as your first feature to also dive in with a co-production on a small budget, like those are a lot of moving pieces that I think a lot of folks would tell you not to do. So I'm curious to just hear like how that went and what that experience was like and if there's things you would take away from that to
Yeah.
whatever do differently or how you would set something up in the next time. Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite a unique kind of opportunity. Like, we are Talent to Watch's first ever co-production. No one's ever tried to do that before. But we got quite lucky, or in particular, like Sophie is Hungarian, so she has citizenship, which was incredibly helpful. And then Ryan Bobkin, our other producer, he had shot a feature in Hungary and had relationships and contacts there already. And so it kind of came about that we got connected with Buddha Films, the production company that came on board with us, and they were able to access financing through the NFI in Hungary. And, that was an incredible opportunity for us to be able to also bring in Hungarian actors to play the mother and father, Ringo and Adam. They're just incredible talents. So we got very lucky that we were able to find them and cover some of those costs through the Hungarian money as well. And then a lot of our post as well took place in Hungary. So Sophie ended up traveling overseas to go and do that in Budapest with our post team, which included we had like an incredible sound designer. And because it was Hungary is also kind of like now becoming a huge hotspot, we were able to like use the colorist Mate, who worked on The Brutalist. Like, so we just had access to these like incredibly high quality, talented individuals. Again, through that Hungarian financing, which was quite wonderful. Like, and yeah, the sound and the color. I'm still not over it. I remember seeing it for the first time in theaters and being like, oh my God, this film looks and sounds incredible. And that's really credit to our Hungarian post production. My dog
Yeah,
is growling at me over here. I'm gonna go pick him up 1 second.
that's okay. Mine was doing that earlier as well. So, oh, hello.
Hi, he's growling. He wants to sit on my lap. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Um, I was maybe going to change course a little bit. know that there was a lot of research done on this project, especially in terms of social work. And I know with your documentary background, I understand you were pretty involved in that process. And I'd love to hear, yeah, about that and how both you and Sophie kind of came to doing that in the first place, but also like what that process was throughout the whole film.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it was a very it was like a wonderful process of how we kind of figured that out. And from the beginning, because of my background in documentary, we always knew that this part of the film would be kind of the section I would spend a lot of time on, kind of figuring out and making happen. And it was always there, this social work scene. Um, and so I think, you know, I'm trying to remember how it started before, even before we had a script, we knew that this social work scene was going to be a big part of it. And I started doing research, and contacting local social workers and interviewing them. And I got connected with two incredible social workers, Beverly Anderson and Lisa LaFlamme, who I think this was quite early on in the journey, and they ended up in the final film as well. They're just incredibly informative, and with them, we were able to do a test shoot of like what this social work scene could look like with real life social workers, where they'd be sitting and they'd be looking at these real documents from Sophie's family, but talking about the context of it within the film, and this character Jeremy, as opposed to Sophie's actual brother. Um, and so we shot this test shoot. Sophie was actually in the test shoot herself, and she was playing herself and kind of asking them questions. And that was a really helpful and revealing process to actually figure out, okay, Sophie did not want to be in the film. Like this, we need like kind of like a Sophie avatar and a character who's able to create that distance, and engage these social workers, kind of in that conversation. And so from there, we kind of figured out a little bit more of like what the mechanics of the scene were going to look like. We're going to have an actor who is um, going to be spending time and talking to all these social workers and interviewing them about the case files in front of them, what they would have done, how things could have changed. Um, and then from there, yeah, we were able to. I talked to so many social workers. I interviewed a lot of people.
Yeah.
I learned so much about, the practice of social work itself, and was able to really reflect on how, I don't want to say burnt out, but like how it's a very difficult job to do, like an incredibly difficult job. And a lot of people were very frustrated with the system, that they were brought in. A lot of older social workers, I talked to a lot of people who left social work, like left the practice because of how frustrating it was for them. And, you know, commenting that they're like young, inexperienced social workers, fresh out of school, not given like proper training, being put in these scenarios like we see in Sophie's in the film of like how a young social worker can kind of change a family's whole trajectory in life, by removing a child from the family. So yeah, it was a very eye-opening experience and conversations that we had. And Sophie and I also did stuff like we traveled, um, or rather we went and visited local drop-in centers for youth, for like places where someone like Jeremy might end up in Vancouver. So we visited the Greater Family Services of Vancouver and their drop-in center, and got to know a little bit more about what kind of resources would be available to a kid like Jeremy. And we visited Peak House as well, which is a local center for kids dealing with substance use issues. And James Kelly was a great consultant on the film. And yeah, just giving us a little bit more context and information to what what would have this looked like 20, 30 years ago, and what does it look like now? How much has changed? And we really heard so much of the same stuff, which was just basically things have changed, but not enough. And they're dealing with the same issues, lack of funding, lack of resources, lack of support for the families and for the other children. And then, yeah, and sometimes it's just there just is no answer. That was kind of the other thing that really came out of those conversations. Like sometimes there just is no good answer. and no easy solution for these kids. And yes, they're being failed on all these fronts, but then the families are also being failed throughout this and learn how to kind of cope and care for these kids. So yeah, I think that was such an integral part into, all our pre-production and really carried it into both halves of the film of how this
Mhm.
informed the treatment of Jeremy, the character, and then, this conversation with the real life social workers when we all came and sat down together. And so we ended up setting it up. I was in the room and sitting at the table as well, which is why I'm listed for some reason as a social worker in the credits. I'm not a social worker. That was kind of just thrown in there, but I was at the table with Amy, who is playing our adult Sasha. And so Amy was really able to lead this like very thoughtful, smart conversation with these social workers about, looking at these documents, providing so much insight into who this person could have been, this child who was clearly struggling, and then, a lot of insight into the family as well and what they were dealing with. So it was, yeah, it was a really incredible experience to kind of work with these social workers and particularly these two women who were kind of our through line from or very early on till like last week. They were at a Q&A with Sophie and I, and we had a discussion together about the film and, reflecting on it and reflecting on what they hope people kind of take away from this film. And it was like incredibly moving and I think one of the best Q&As we've done, um, because they carry so much insight into this, and they both have personal experience as well, with siblings that have had issues. And I think, yeah, that conversation was just really enlightening because they're incredibly compassionate people. They're willing to, like they have such insight into the solutions that we need, how systems need to change, how, the systemic resources are not enough, but also at the end of the day, Lisa, one of our social workers, she just said sometimes love just gets tired and you just figure this out, through these cases and you see it again and again. Like love gets tired, the families get tired, and it's just they're put in an impossible situation. Um, so yeah, I'm just so grateful we had those conversations and we have these relationships with these wonderful folks, and I really hope that the film, we also have a relationship with an organization in the States called the National Association of Social Workers, and they have also done some Q&As. So we're actually actively trying to bring folks in to kind of have more of an insightful, nuanced conversation about these systems, and how they could be improved to help kids like Jeremy, that you see in the film. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the film just immediately, like throughout, throughout the whole film, but even after, like it has a way of just resonating and making, for me, I was like, oh, I have so many questions. And I think that's really interesting to involve like the community, like the social work community on a larger scale. I think that, yeah, just raising awareness and like having those discussions that, I mean, that's amazing. I'm curious maybe from you personally, like where, audiences leaving the theater, like what are you hoping they're taking away from it, from this film? And is there something that, really connects with you? Or I mean, maybe it's the same things you've already discussed, but yeah, curious.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's like I think I've been to a couple Q&As where people are like, what is the message of the film? Like,
Yeah.
well, yeah. I don't think there's ever an intention to have a single message of sorts, but particularly with the question of social work and really engaging in that side of things. I think there's definitely an intention to have us kind of look closely at, the available resources that we have, especially like in this province. I've just learned so much about how it functions and BC social work functions, and how much more funding and resources need to be put towards these people or towards these structures rather to support these families and these kids. They're woefully underfunded, or in a lot of cases there's just not a lot of knowledge. I think James from Peak House told us that. He's like, sometimes we have empty beds just because the families don't know these resources even exist. So there's also like a huge, communication problem about them even knowing what's available to them as well. Um, So yeah, I think that that definitely was like a core thing we wanted to engage with, and by bringing in these social workers and having these Q&As, this is like we do want to have these conversations and hold space for them as much as possible, and bring in these experts who, will know way more about us, but hopefully the film is just sparks all these different types of conversations to take place, and I think that's the best case scenario is that people walk away from it. Um, so obviously having, I think it's such an emotional film. It's such a heartfelt film. It's very hard not to cry every time I watch it.
Yeah.
So there's like all this stuff on a personal level. I think that's an emotional connection to the film as well, beyond just like the social side of things and the questions we hope people kind of start asking.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious, Amy does such an amazing job at like capture. It feels like she knows so much in the film, even though she's trying to like, discover it as we watch. And I'm curious to
Yeah.
just hear about that casting process, how you like if I remember correctly, I think you were involved with that a little. I mean, obviously as a producer, but I think more
Yeah.
so than is typical. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'd love to hear how that was for you and how that all came about.
Yeah. Yeah, so our Amy, our Sasha character was kind of a tricky person to find, and then that came about through Ryan, our producer, who was in New York, and he went to a comedy show because Amy's a comedian, like that's her background. And he just like I kind of had a feeling about it. He's like, I have a feeling about her. I think she could be interesting. And I was like, I remember thinking like a comedian, like what? I didn't click for me. But Sophie was immediately like interested, like, yes, there's something about her. And I was unfamiliar with her work at the time, but how we kind of set up her casting process was that I sat down with her and we kind of did a little bit of a scenario where she was a social worker and I was asking her questions and we were engaging in just like a little bit of yeah, a little bit of role play and just seeing how she did. And, Amy is such an interesting person because she's hilarious. She's got such a quiet gravitas to her too. She's really got this, I think she in this like this calm depth to her that really came across in that conversation. Yeah, this like very introspective, thoughtful character that it's funny because her humor is so dry too. So I was kind of like expecting her to like come out, but no, she was just in it. She immediately kind of snapped in and locked into that character. And I'd never worked with actors before. Like this was my first time working with actors and like doing an audition process. But from that, one Zoom conversation we did alone, it was like very apparent that she was kind of the Sasha. She was the adult Sasha that we needed, and she just brought such a depth to the character in a way that again, working as someone who's comes from a documentary background, this is my first time producing a script, so seeing something on the page and then like seeing what it looks like to be translated into an actor and a person and how they kind of make it their own. I think it just became so uniquely Amy's character through that process. And I just think she did an exceptional job. Like I think it's not a spoiler at this point, but there's a scene with Amy, like older Sasha and young Sasha in the film, kind of when they kind of come together, and I just cry every time. Every time, I just think she's just knocked it out of the park. I mean, both of them did. Ilil and Amy are both such exceptional actors. So yeah, I can't commend Amy enough, and I hope I see her. I hope she gets more dramatic roles because she's definitely got the range.
Yeah, she'll be wanted for both now,
Yeah, great.
which is great.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm
yeah,
super
that's
sure.
really cool. Um, I was
Yeah.
curious if we could talk a little bit about sales and distribution. Very challenging things to get these days, and from I guess it was the premiere in Locarno, I believe, if I'm
Yeah.
correct, and then now all the way to a pretty big theatrical release. I'm curious to hear kind of how that whole process was for you, but also how it feels right now juggling. I mean, all these Q&As, and I mean, I see Sophie traveling everywhere. I mean, I feel like there's lots going on. So I'd love to, yeah, hear how that's all
Yeah.
going.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'll just say it's been very surreal to see how the success of the film. I think we're all still just kind of like, what is happening? What is going on and what is happening right now? I think it's no underestimation to just say it's pretty unusual for a Canadian film to kind of take off this way. So we're just so, so grateful for how things have gone. But yeah, like we got into Locarno, and like our distribution kind of journey started. We got signed with More Than Films, who handle our international sales. Um, and then we were at TIFF, and while we were there at TIFF, an offer came through with Janus Films, which was yeah, blew our minds. No,
Yeah.
needless to say, we were like, oh my God. Um, and that's so that came through, and that's a credit to the film, and it's also a credit to Sophie as well because she has this incredible set of short films that were on the Criterion Channel already. So she had a relationship with Criterion Janice. Previously, they were aware of her work, and then yeah, when they came to TIFF and they saw Blue Heron, it was almost like the next day that offer came through, which is I definitely unheard of for how those things kind of go. And so Janice was on board pretty early on, and I cannot say nicer things about Janice. Like they've been so supportive of us in the film. It's been like a very pleasant uh and just like yeah, surreal experience also of like how much attention and effort and investment they've put into us in the film. And then our Canadian distribution, that was kind of like that took us a while to kind of figure out. We spent a lot of time talking to a lot of people. I know I talked to you, talked to
Yeah.
a lot of producers, trying to figure out like who would be the right fit for us. And we took our sweet time. Like a lot of people were like, "Hello, like, can you let us know, like, are you on or are you like on board or not?" And we ended up kind of finding Blue Fox through that process, who also have a relationship already with Janus Criterion and do a lot of their releases. And that ended up being completely the right fit for us as well. So that kind of worked out really well. And they have like a very symbiotic relationship, and have been just putting, yeah, incredible, incredible support into the film. When we started off our theatrical, launch in the States, it started in LA and New York with Janice, and then it kind of came, and we kind of arranged it so Sophie could be in every city. Well,
Right.
not every city, but in many of the cities for the opening. So she was like in LA and New York and Boston and San Francisco. And then she did, our Canada run was Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. I know she just did Hamilton yesterday. Like, so a big part of that campaign was staggering the release of
Mhm.
our theatrical, so that Sophie could go and be there in those cities and do those Q&As. And she has like been on a one-woman road show. Like she has been all over and traveling. I know she must be so exhausted. But I think, from that experience of seeing her do it, I think we're like, oh, this is definitely helping ticket sales. Like her
Yeah.
presence there and her having the energy and the capacity to go and travel with the film and be there and talk to folks definitely makes a huge, huge difference. And Janice and Blue Fox have been really supportive of that, kind of helping that staggered release happen, and making sure Sophie would be able to be there. So yeah, she's still on the road show. Like I think it's almost coming to an end, but I know she has more travel coming up. But the theatrical has just been like incredible. Like I think we're in our fifth week now.
That's
Continent
amazing.
wide, it's still in theaters. There's still dates. I know it's still gonna play. Like I think it's playing the Park today. Still playing the Rio and Viv in Vancouver. Yeah, and like our in Toronto, it's still in theaters as well. So we've just been kind of blown away by the demand for it. People are getting out, people are seeing the film. And yeah, I think we're just, yeah, it's been so cool to see. So surreal. Yeah.
Definitely. And very cool to be watching also from kind of like I find my perspective. I'm just like it's been so fun to see and yeah, I'm just so proud and excited about you guys. So ah
Thank you. We know how rare and special this is, right?
yeah.
Like we know this is not the norm for a Canadian indie film to kind of be getting this pickup and this treatment. So we're all just like, yeah, we're all just so grateful for this experience. And yeah, just appreciating it all and like I said, like Sophie's putting, I really want to give her credit. She's really putting in the hard work of like touring the film, which I don't think you really think about as a filmmaker
No.
of like how well, you make a film and that's it. But like no, she's been on tour for almost a year, like traveling all over the world to bring this film places. So yeah, I want to make sure she gets the credit for all the hard work that she's putting in on the ground. And yeah, yeah, I think we're just so lucky to that audiences are responding so well to the film and I think a lot of it's word of mouth too.
Yeah, which is great. So keep talking about the film.
Talking about it, still in theaters.
Yeah,
Go see it
it
again.
is. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm curious, like, is there something that this film maybe taught you as a producer or even as a filmmaker, that you would carry into your films moving forward that maybe you hadn't considered before?
Hmm. Yeah. Yes, I mean so many different things. It was such a learning experience. I mean, it was huge. It was like one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, no question. But it was also one of the most gratifying experiences of my life. Like, I'm incredibly proud to be a part of this film and to be yeah, part of the Blue Heron team. So I'm trying to think like what are the main takeaways that I could express. I think one of them is for me as a filmmaker is watching Sophie work and watching her. I just think her absolute like dedication and like seeing her, I was very cool to see her locked in on set. She was, a friend, a coworker, like we've been working on this for a long time, but like actually see her on set she's very calm, very like t never really stressed on set, like always like able to just sit and chat with actors and chat with crew and just like make sure everyone's feeling good and always aligned. So she was like a very she was leading the set very well in a very calming presence, but she was also I don't know, she was so locked into her artistic vision. Oh, like 100% of the time. And she always knew what she wanted, and I was so impressed by that. And I remember just being like, oh, I never feel like that when I'm on my projects. I'm always like scrambled and being like, oh, is this the right thing? Should I be shooting this? And I think I really took a lot from her of just how dedicated she is, how hardworking she is, how she puts in so much thought into it, and then she just really has a very committed vision. And she always had that vision. Like, think, of course, things change, but she really had a very clear vision of what this film was going to be um, throughout. And I think that was just so impressive. And that just kind of made me want to take that into my own work and just having that kind of confidence to commit to artistic decisions and see them through. Um, was yeah, as a fellow filmmaker, it's just very inspiring to see.
Definitely.
And it's just cool to see your friends just doing what they do best when they're in action. You're just like, damn, like yes, you are so good at this. This is so cool. That's like an endlessly fulfilling experience. And then so I wouldn't say that on like the artistic side. And then on the very practical side, I think the biggest takeaway, and I'm surprised I haven't mentioned this actually yet, is that like I am a disabled filmmaker and producer. I have a chronic illness that's extremely energy limiting, very physically limiting. Um, and yeah, it's obviously made things very difficult. Uh, Traditional film does not operate to be accessible to people with disabilities, no matter what they are. So that was a very eye-opening experience for me. And I'm grateful, like I was able to kind of like I was sick before this film kind of came on board, and so we were able to build in certain accessibility things for me. So I wasn't always on set. I was working from home, that were really helpful. And another thing, we had shorter shoot days because we were working with children.
Yeah.
But that also was like an accessibility thing that was really helpful for me as well. Um, so I think for me, it was always a process of having like changing capacity because of my illness, day to day, and like really learning I have to communicate that like very quickly with Sophie and Ryan, always of being like, okay, today I'm sorry, like I can't do this, I can't do this. And we already knew that was going to be the case, that we would have to be malleable. And then thankfully Ryan's, an incredible producer and he would step in and be on set, drive people or, be on site in Nanaimo. He really was able to kind of step in physical places where I wasn't. So I also want to give credit to him as well for like really working with me on that because it's incredibly hard to be a filmmaker with a disability. It's incredibly hard to be working on these on like traditional sets when you have, you're working through a very tight production schedule. You work with children too. That's like a whole other thing. Like it was just there was a certain amount of yeah, just ability to kind of work around things that we did figure out, but I think my takeaway too is like I just want to see sets become even more accessible. Like this is to me this is so so crucial, and it's crucial not just for disabled folks, it's crucial for everybody. Everyone was like, "Oh my God, shorter sets are so nice." Like we already know everyone who's working on like traditional film sets is so burnt out, so tired, so physically exhausted. It's such a taxing job. So even if you're the most able-bodied person, it's still physically, mentally, emotionally exhausting work. And so that kind of that process, I was like, oh, an accessible set and like taking principles of disability justice into those scenarios actually benefits everybody. Everybody
Yeah.
wins when things are a little bit more sustainable, when you have shorter shoot days, or when you're considering just like there's so many different ways in which sets could be accessible, whether it's working with a person with an illness and just kind of having certain abilities to work around them, having some flexibility there. And that's kind of been like a huge for me now. That's like a huge thing that I really want to talk about. And I also am like in the process of looking to get trained as an accessibility coordinator. Um,
Oh,
yeah, that's something
that's
I'm very
awesome.
passionate about. Yeah, and I want to be the person who goes on sets and says, here's how you can make this accommodating for disabled people, but also for everybody. We all win when things are more sustainable, when we're not just driving ourselves into the ground with exhaustion, because that's just how it's done. Like that's, you learn that quickly. People are like I think I've seen on other sets, everyone has the best intentions beforehand and it's like, we're gonna do this differently. We're gonna take care of ourselves and we're not gonna have long shoot days. And then you get on set and that just flies out the window and everyone's so stressed out. Everyone just reverts back to like stress behavior and things just don't kind of function in a way that I think could be much more sustainable and accessible for folks. So yeah, I'd love to pursue that more on more film sets, and I just love to for those conversations to be happening more and more about how we can kind of make this more sustainable for everyone in the long run.
Yeah, no, fully support this. I feel like even, I feel like every time we're finished a film set, I'm always just like, man, we set out with all these like really awesome goals and yet like, and sure, some things we hit, of course, which is awesome, but then like some things we don't, and it always becomes this like reevaluation, but then at the time when you're either reevaluating it right away and then, the next project is a year from now and everything, all the memories have somehow gone out the window and you forgot how actually much time you need to prep for certain changes or even just like getting the
Yeah,
crew on board, even though
yeah,
in theory it's not hard, but or it shouldn't be hard.
it shouldn't
Um,
be hard.
but it can be. So that's really cool. I'm so glad you're looking into, did you say, sorry, it was accessibility coordinator? Like
Yeah, it's like a
roles?
job. It's like an actual job now that people get hired for. So accessibility producer or coordinator. And then also just like I've heard some people have like approached me for being accessibility consultant as well, which I think
Yes.
is very cool. And something I'd love to do more of. Because yeah, now I'm extremely passionate about making these spaces comfortable and safe for everyone, but also for disabled people who've just like I think I started off in this industry as a able-bodied person who had like no limitations. And now, things are very different for me. And I use a mobility device and I have certain fluctuating capacities. And I just think, oh, if I was where I was at now, I would never be in film. I would just be like, how that world's not for me. Like, how could I possibly do those things with what I'm working with right now? So my hope is that just like I want all young disabled people to feel so welcome into this industry and feel like that they can make things and do things too. And I think that yeah, there's a much bigger conversation to be had about the industry itself,
Yes.
and the changes that really could, I think, benefit all of us in the long run.
No, definitely. Well, we'll have to continue that part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am just noticing the time. Sorry, Anna, I just realized I saw your message. But we've got about 10 minutes left for the Q&A. I'm just gonna see, I believe we've got a few questions.
I clocked one that I
Oh,
can
yes,
start with.
for sure. Thank you.
So it was any word about streamer interest after the theatrical.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have those kind of locked in already through our distributors, thankfully. So Janice is Criterion Channel. And like we said, so we're really lucky that Sophie kind of had her films already on there. I think they're on there right now. You can go and see her shorts. And so that there'll be the American release will show up on the Criterion Channel. And as well in Canada and Blue Fox, we have Crave as well. So we've got our streamers, which were those kind of happened quite quickly through our distributors, thankfully. Yeah. So it's coming.
It's coming.
It's
Sweet.
coming. Yeah.
I don't see any more questions in the chat, I don't think, but does anybody, if anyone has a question in the audience and wants to wave or just turn their camera on? Hi, David.
Hi, really happy to see Capilano University's lunchroom in the film. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sophie was
I'm
in the
wondering
lunchroom.
whether wherever you went, people went, "Hey, what have you got next?" Were they very interested in like you pitching the next projects that you're going to do together or your personal projects?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean I think that's the big question is what's next. I think Sophie's figuring that out for herself. She doesn't know what she's gonna do next and what she's pitching next. And for me, like I'm back to like making my small experimental celluloid films that I'm hand processing. Like I'm still have my own filmmaking practice, which is very small and yeah, works a lot with celluloid film. So I'm finishing a film right now that'll hopefully come out in festivals in the fall. So unknown what the next big feature for Sophie's going to be. Unknown like what's going to happen with me in the future and producing more. But I think I definitely just have a plan to continue my own artistic practice as it brings me so much joy, and I love making films, and I love shooting on film and. Um, yeah, we'll just see. And then for me, I think the working as an accessibility coordinator and I think that is going to be also a big focus for me in the future. So
Thank you.
we'll see. Unknown, yeah, the future is still unknown.
I see another question in the chat from Elise. How did you know you were ready to make the leap from short form to produce a long form film? And will you continue to create both documentary and scripted?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really know I was ready to make the leap. I just love Sophie and trusted her and just was like, all right, if you're doing it, let's go. Because we were going to make a short film together and we just went straight into the feature instead. Um, yeah, and I think I felt, I had experience, like I had worked as a producer. I had an associate producer credit on a feature film before. So I did have a sense of what it was going to entail, but it was my first narrative. And that I think was like the biggest jump for me was diving into the world of narrative film and scripted. And I don't know. I don't know if I'll do another scripted. Like I still I I am definitely more interested in it than I used to be. But I still am kind of more in the hybrid world, I think, at the end of the day. But who knows? Yeah, I think it's more a question of the right collaborators and working with the right people more than anything. Like that, I think that for me will always be the number one question of why I would work on a project is because of, that person, the right person, hopefully a friend, and just, like with Sophie, just really trusting their vision and really loving the project as well. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one more, Anna. If there's anybody else in the audience who's got a question.
Last chance to ask. You have any other questions?
Well, then I can ask the last question if there's no one out there.
Amazing.
Just Sarah, if there's any advice that you'd give to honestly either producers in the room or other filmmakers in the room, since you sit on both sides, would love to, yeah, hear if there's anything that you'd like to impart before we leave.
I mean, I just want to say, like, I think we are just so lucky, and I'm just so grateful that we were surrounded by wonderful people who helped us out. And Sarah Blake, you were one of them. Like I didn't mention this, but Sarah Blake was our producer mentor on the film that we got through. Telefilm kind of sets you up with a mentor, and like your expertise and just advice was incredibly helpful throughout the film. And I was phoning you, I was talking to Tyler from Experimental Films, just like or Experimental Forest rather. We just have such an incredible community of filmmakers, producers, people who are passionate about cinema in this city who are like so generous and willing to help each other out. And like, yeah, I just want to say, first of all, like, thank you so much for everything you offered up to us and to me and to this film, because it really made it what it was. And my advice would just be like, I don't know, take advantage of our community and like how incredibly talented, all these collaborators are, and how supportive everybody really is. Like that's my experience. Like I lived in Toronto for a bit. I got to experience like the Toronto film industry and film community, but I was like, we have it good in Vancouver. We really have something special out here. And yeah, I'm just so grateful for it.
Oh, that's very kind, but also so true. That's like, I mean, that's also
Yeah.
been my experience, like just being able to ask so many amazing people who just know so much more than me. And like and vice versa, like you learn so much when you talk to other people and share stuff. So
Yeah.
sweet.
We've got a supportive community out here. We've got something good going, I think. Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
Ah,
All right, with that, I think we'll wrap up. Thank you very much to Sara Wylie and Sarah Baker for your time. And thanks to everyone who joined today. Don't forget to follow both of them on Instagram. I've just posted it in the chat. Um, I mean, you don't really know what's going on, but if you either wanted to plug anything in the future, go ahead. Very
Uh,
good.
I got nothing to plug right now. I don't know what you
yeah, I don't have anything to
Watch
plug.
Blue Heron. Watch Blue Heron.
Yeah, Blue
There
Heron.
you
Go
go.
see it in theaters.
Blue
I
Heron,
am
Blue
gonna go
Heron.
take a nap. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Tell all your
Uh,
friends
Tell
to
all your
watch.
friends. Yeah.
Be sure to follow us on social media at Gems Vancouver to stay in the loop about all our upcoming events and opportunities. Thank you, everyone, so much for today. Hope everyone
Yeah.
has a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so
Have
much.
a
Thanks for
great
having
weekend.
us. Take care. Bye.
Bye.